Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Master Microsoft SharePoint. Thank you for joining me today. I'm going to give it a few more minutes before we start things for today, but in the meantime, I'm going to launch a quick poll on the screen. It's just a little fun word cloud. Feel free to enter your response. I'm just interested to see where everyone is joining us from today. So whenever you get the chance, feel free to just type in wherever you're calling from. I'm in Virginia right now, so I don't know if there's anybody else from Virginia. All right. I'm going to give it until around 1:03, and then we're going to get started. Just give people a few more minutes to join and get started in today. I hope everyone's doing well. I cannot believe it's the last day of July. I woke up today and I'm just looking at the calendar like, oh my goodness, this month just flew by. Oh, somebody's from Mississippi. Okay, cool. Mississippi, oh, that must be hot. Columbia, we have quite a range so far. I hope people are staying cool. I have plans to go to the beach this weekend, so I'm pretty excited. All right, I'm just gonna give it 2 more minutes. Sometimes it takes a second to join on Teams, so I always like to give people the opportunity. All right. But yeah, I mean, people already have located the chat box. That's going to be available throughout the entirety of the presentation. So that in the Q&A box, I'll just say really quickly, put your questions in the Q&A box. It's easier for me to keep track of them. But if there's any technical issues, you guys can't hear me correctly or see me correctly, or my screen at any point, the chat should be open throughout the entirety. So I will be checking it. But with that, I believe that we're going to get started today. I know it's Wednesday. All of you are busy. So I sit on we sit on the event page that this is going to run from 1 to 2. I'm hoping to finish a little bit earlier. Again, I'm really grateful for you all for joining us today. It's not easy to stop in midweek, so it's great to see you all here. And hopefully this will give you some tips or tricks to help you manage your Microsoft SharePoint site better, or just help you refamiliarize yourself with Microsoft SharePoint and utilize a few features that you may not be using currently that could save you some time and help you maximize your ROI. So this is Mastering Microsoft SharePoint. My name is Reese Herberg. I'm going to be leading today's presentation. I'm Opfinity's marketing administrator, so all things webinar events, I'm your go-to girl. I am alone today. Usually I have 1 or 2 more people with me joining me and helping me manage Q&A. So I apologize if at any point I miss your question or I don't see it until a little bit later, but I'm going to try my best to rotate back and forth just to keep track of everything. But with that, we're just going to get started right in the presentation today. So first, some housekeeping items. I already went through the Q&A in the chat box. I'm just going to reiterate for anyone that joined late. If you have questions specific to the presentation or just questions that you had in mind going into today's presentation, make sure that you're putting them in the Q&A box. That's where I'm going to be answering all the Q&A. For technical difficulties or just to add commentary, I really want this to feel like a conversation. So feel free to put that in the chat box itself. That I might be checking less often though. So again, for high priority Q&A items, just make sure that you're popping into that Q&A box for me. We are going to have an allocated time for Q&A at the end of the presentation. But again, this is something that I'm going to be trying to keep track of throughout. So if I go too fast, if you miss something, feel free to utilize that as much as possible. At the end of the presentation, I am also going to go through some of our upcoming events. This is the first in our SharePoint series. So if you are somebody who is trying to start your SharePoint training journey or just distribute materials to your organization, definitely stay tuned to that. SharePoint is a beast of a program. To turn every single stone over in an hour is impossible. So this is definitely going to be an ongoing conversation for us. So what can you expect out of today's presentation? So firstly, I'm just going to briefly go over a SharePoint introduction, what it looks like, what you can expect from its interface, just so when I refer to those things later on in the presentation, nobody sat there confused. I'm assuming that everyone here is at different phases in their journey with SharePoint. So again, I'm going to try to make the introduction brief, but for those of us who are joining us who are like, what is SharePoint? I don't even know where to begin. Don't worry, we are going to cover it, and then we're going to get into more of the fun stuff. So then we're going to get into actually getting started with SharePoint, what different sites look like, how to utilize templates, and then going into more advanced features, how to create a user-friendly site, a site that you and your employees or those in your organization actually want to spend time on, and that don't give you a headache. So we're going to be going into that, how to increase engagement, how to make the most of those collaboration features, and then we're going to close with, obviously, we are a IT company, so of course we have to go over the importance of data and security and some cybersecurity issues that you may run into, and also some drawbacks or challenges that your organization might face. So again, jumping into that introduction of really quickly, what is Microsoft SharePoint? Just in a nutshell, Microsoft SharePoint is a web-based collaboration platform that is integrated with your Microsoft 365 app. So it should be included in that business premium plan that most organizations subscribe to. And it's essentially a place that allows you to enhance collaboration and project management, and facilitate and streamline information management within your organization. So what are some real use cases of SharePoint? Firstly is document management. You can think this as a document archive of some sorts. It's a great way to organize your files into one place, simultaneously work on documents with people in your organization, and also keep track of version histories. So again, I'm going to go into what this is all going to look like on an actual SharePoint site. So just really briefly going over these things. Next is content management. Mostly how people operate with SharePoint is they'll have a parent site, which will be the parent site of your organization, but then you can create different hub sites based on what project or what department your organization is working with. So it's a great way to just compartmentalize the many moving parts of your organization into one space. Next is for knowledge management. If you have training courses, orientation materials, or just documentation that everyone in your organization needs to have access to, SharePoint is a fantastic way to streamline that information across your organization. And then lastly, like I mentioned before, project management. It's a great way to multitask, and you can consider it to be your jack of all trades of some sort, where you can create a site for essentially anything that your organization is attempting to accomplish, and it's going to be all in that one centralized space. So again, sorry if I'm going a little bit quick. I just want to make sure that we have time to get into the actual nitty-gritty, but if I'm going too fast at any point, feel free to pop into the chat bin. All right, so really quickly, again, just going to go over some key differences. I'm not going to spend too much time on this slide. I wrote it all down so that way if you need to refer to it later, you can. But what are the differences between SharePoint Online and SharePoint On-Premise? So SharePoint first began in 2003. At that point, it was entirely on-premise. It was handled by people's internal IT departments. And then it is now online, meaning it is now cloud-based. And it is now integrated with your Microsoft 365 apps. Today's presentation is going to be focused entirely on the online version of SharePoint. This is the version that I believe most people are utilizing now, one that I would suggest. It just creates more standardization for your organization. It also makes it easier to access your files, and it costs less. There's less external costs, essentially. But again, all the key actual material, tangible differences between the two are on the screen. But for now, I'm just going to move to our next slide. So what are some considerations that your organization should make before beginning your SharePoint journey? If you're first starting your SharePoint migration journey, firstly, I would suggest you to really identify the goals of SharePoint within your organization. Again, SharePoint has many functionalities that can become overwhelming. So if you don't have a clear goal or a clear pathway of what you are intending to do with SharePoint, it can be easy to get lost, and then in turn, that disorganization reflects in your return on investment. So again, just defining some user cases, some real use cases. I'm going to show you some today, but just how are you actually going to apply SharePoint features to make the most of them within your organization. Next is if you work in an industry where data needs to be confidential or you need to follow certain regulatory guidelines, involve those legal and compliance teams earlier on in that discourse. There's a lot of file sharing, a lot of permission control that goes into creating a successful SharePoint site. And involving those teams early on is going to save you a lot of trouble in the long term, because it is easy to accidentally mislabel a file, mislabel permissions, and then open yourself up to some legal issues. So again, involving those teams as much as possible, if that is important to your organization, is a consideration to make. The last two sort of go in tandem together. These are evaluating your migration needs. So before you even begin to consider how you're beginning your SharePoint journey, how are you considering factors such as employee usage, employee training, if you need to hire a developer to make your internet more user-friendly or to support the needs of your organization, what is that going to look like? And then in the long term, as your organization hopefully grows, how is SharePoint going to grow with you? And how are you going to create a site that allows for that growth, and also make sure that your data is secure and safe for the long term? All right, moving on to licensing. I'm not going to spend too much time on this again, but again, the most common plan that we see with our organizations is that Microsoft Business Standard, which is $12.50 per user, but it is an investment. So you do get the inclusion of all these apps, including SharePoint, but at the end of the day, remember that SharePoint is an investment in your organization, and if you're not currently maximizing your collaboration and productivity on the site, you're losing money. So just quickly put this in. This is something that's easy to Google, so I'm not going to spend too much time on it because I want to get into the demonstration today. But hopefully this overview just gave you a quick look into what SharePoint actually is. If this is the first that you're even discussing SharePoint, you're more familiar with real use cases and how it actually works. Okay, time to get into the fun stuff, which is why you guys all came into here today, which is how you are going to get started on SharePoint. For those of you who already have a SharePoint site, don't worry, this is going to be the quicker part of our presentation, and then I'm going to get into some features that you may not be currently using. But again, I just want to meet people where they are, so if you're not familiar with SharePoint at all, don't worry, we are going to cover it. So first, before I start to share my screen with you all and show you how it's actually going to work, I just want to draw your attention to the site if you're not already familiar with it. Microsoft has a SharePoint lookbook, and within the SharePoint lookbook, you get a bunch of free templates. I know most of us don't have time to design an entire site by scratch, and Microsoft doesn't expect us to. So I highly encourage you to take a look at this site. I tagged it here in the slide, which I will send out after. But I highly encourage you to save yourself some time and energy and utilize one of the free templates that Microsoft provides. And it just shaves off a lot of time in those initial building stages. But with that, we are going to begin the actual demo part, which is going to be the majority of our presentation today. But before I jump into that, does anyone have any questions so far? I know that that was a lot of information to take in at once, so I'm happy to answer any questions before we get into demo. All right. Doesn't seem like anyone has any questions. Again, I'll be trying to check it throughout, but I just wanted to pause there and touch base with you all. All right, so I'm going to start to share my screen so we can actually get into how we are going to begin to navigate this interface. So here I'm just at my Microsoft 365 home. I'm going to navigate up here to my apps. And as you can see, SharePoint is right in the middle. I'm going to open up SharePoint, and that brings me to the SharePoint homepage. If I were to begin a site from scratch, I would navigate up here to create site. Here I'm given two options, a team site or communication site. Today's presentation, we're going to be focusing on what a team site is. This is a site that is internal and works within your organization. All the data is private and protected, and only those that you grant access to have access to the site. A communication site is one where if you're trying to broadcast information to a bunch of people at once, you would utilize a communication site. We are most likely going to have a webinar on communication sites in the future, but most people wanted to learn more about team sites, so that's going to be the focus of our presentation today. So when I select a team site, it prompts me here. And again, these are the templates I was just telling you guys about. There's more on the lookbook page, but already Microsoft gives us a bunch of these useful free templates to help us save time on designing on internet. For example, if I click the employee onboarding one, I'm automatically given one home page, 3 additional pages, 1 list, and 1 page template. Obviously, I can customize these further, but it's a great skeleton to use to save you time when you're initially building it. So I'm going to name my site Affinity Onboarding. And here you can see that automatically it creates that group email address and a site address that people can visit. This group email address is an awesome part of SharePoint. This is one of the promises that SharePoint delivers on of increasing that collaboration with your organization. Because SharePoint is integrated with your Microsoft 365 apps, if I were to create this site, all of those within that group could receive site emails, could add events to that group calendar, and it operates similarly to how your personal Outlook or personal Outlook calendar works. When I press next, I can adjust privacy settings. I'm going to keep it to private, and then obviously you can select the language if you're calling in. We had a few people calling in from a different country, so if English isn't your primary language, you can easily adjust that. And when I press create site, it is going to have me manage permissions and add which people from my organization I want to have access to that site. For purposes of this webinar, I'm going to utilize the site that I already used with one of the templates, but I just wanted to quickly show you how you are going to start from scratch with creating a site. But I'm actually going to navigate over here to my test site. Here I've already added some columns just to show you what it looks like when you first utilize one of these templates. What's really great with these templates is that even though they're from the get-go already on the SharePoint stage, it's really easy just to go in and edit based on how you actually want it to look, or actually how you want your SharePoint site to operate. So here, for example, we have these 3 columns right here. I can adjust it to 2 tiles if I want. I can adjust it to 5 tiles. I can make the tiles turn into layers and change how it looks visually. Again, we're going to be doing an additional webinar just on how to create a user-friendly intranet. So I'm not going to go into all the features right this moment, just for the sake of time. But I encourage you, if you haven't already, to play around with your SharePoint site and just see how changing the flow can change how your SharePoint site reads. But obviously here, I added in a link to instantly take me to our team training. If you want to edit that at any point, you can just select this edit point up here and edit web part. And I can actually change the link that this link redirects to. So if I wanted to change it, I can change it to, I can select change. I can change it to a different part of our site. I can change it to a different part of our OneDrive. And I can also just put in a link to an external source if I want that to be easily accessible to people in my organization. But again, we're going to be doing a separate webinar just on the actual intranet. So for the sake of purposes of this webinar, I really just want to get you guys familiar with the interface and the key features. So we're going to be moving on to actually how you're going to start creating document libraries, pages, and adding aspects of your website that you need to make the most of that communication. So firstly, going into document libraries. So document libraries are a fantastic way to store documents and to make documents easily accessible for members of your organization that are working on the same project, or you just want to have everything in the same place to keep track of version history. These are your document libraries are where your folders and your files are going to live. So to create a new document library, I'm going to navigate to this new dropdown, select document library, and then again, Microsoft gives me some templates. For the purpose of this webinar, I want to show you how you're going to make it from scratch. So I'm going to select blank library. And I want this library to be employee orientation information. I'm not going to put a description in to save time, but you can describe what that is. So then that way, when your employees are redirected, they know what the document library is intended to do. When I press create, you can see that it automatically appears on the left-hand side. I can also hide that if I want, just by not checking that checkbox to appear on the left-hand side, but I wanted it to be a part of the left of the page so you can see how it would appear, so I'm not going to do that. Here we can see that I can rather create a new document by selecting new. I can automatically create a new folder, Word document, Excel workbook, any of these, and that will automatically appear in the folder. I'm going to show you how you're going to upload as well. It's really quick. And we're just going to upload this random document just to see how it would look. And boom, it appears automatically. There's a few features that I want to show you within your document library that are important. First and foremost is how to manage permissions. So to manage access, I'm going to right-click these three dots right here, and then select Share. And I can now share this with whoever in my organization I want to have access to this document. When I press send, they're invited in an email, and we can actually simultaneously edit this document. Now, what happens if, say, I created this document and one of my coworkers gets on and accidentally deletes a really important section, and I'm panicking because I didn't save the original file? No worries, SharePoint makes that easy for you to archive. So again, I'm going to, in that case, if I want to find the first version history, I am going to navigate up here to these three dots, locate version history, and boom, as you can see, hypothetically, I could see which each version was modified by, the size of comments, and when I select open, it opens in Word that original document. So again, don't worry if somebody messes anything up, or even if you just want to compare of how the version have changed from the first draft, you can easily navigate that version history. The other thing I wanted to, there's two other points I want to give attention to the document library before we move on. First and foremost is the importance of standardization with document naming. One of the common complaints about SharePoint is that it is easy for files to get lost. So as a quick point, I highly recommend that you organize your files in a standardized way, have the names have a date attached, or use document tabs to keep everything organized. Without it, it's easy for you to add 200 documents and just get them lost. So that is a fault of SharePoint that I will bring to your attention. And I will also say that it's easy to add columns to keep it more organized. So I'm actually going to show you how we can create an organization tag to make it easy to keep track of progress. So first, I'm going to add a column. And this is one of the most useful columns, in my opinion, is choice. So I'm going to select choice, click next, and I want to name this column progress. And here you can see I can make it person or group, hyperlink, image, single line of text. I'm going to keep it as choice. And as you can see, it comes with these helpful colors. I'm going to write done, in progress, and then overdue. And then press save. Then when I navigate to edit in grid view right up here, I can actually change the tag of the document and have that automatically appear when I open up this employee orientation. Again, you can imagine the different ways that you could utilize this feature. You can do it for things that be sent to clients, things that haven't been edited in a while. you can imagine how you can customize this to make sense for your organization, but I just really want to, this is a feature that I personally use that I find useful, so I just wanted to bring it to your attention. The next thing before we move on that you might not be familiar with is that you can actually automate certain processes within documentation if you find that when certain triggers automatically prompt you to have to manually send things to people or manually add values in, you can actually right-click these three dots right here, scroll down to automate, and you can create a rule rather when a file is deleted, a new file is added, or data in column changes. This is especially useful when you're adding an Excel file and people are adding, whether it be new data or new metadata to an Excel file. But for example, if I wanted to create a rule for when a new file is added, send an email to whoever it was created by, whoever it was modified, or to me if I'm the department head. And again, you can create different rules based on, I'm not going to go into each and every one of them, but if you're not currently using rules to automate some of these features for yourself, I encourage you to play around with it and see how it helps you shave down on time. All right, so moving on to a different feature of your SharePoint interface, we're actually going to navigate to lists. So as an IT company, we use lists all the time for warranty reports, asset reports. They're an extremely useful way to keep track of data within your organization. So I'm going to create a list. And again, this is something where if it makes sense for your organization, I highly encourage you to use one of the Microsoft templates. They're super organized. These templates also make it easier for when you're adding in Excel data. It's just more standardized and there's less room for human error. So again, unless you do need to create a blank list for your organization, I would suggest trying to find one from the templates that makes sense for you if you're not super technically proficient. But say that you have a standardized list within your organization for financial or marketing KPIs. I could hypothetically, by choosing from an existing list, I could hypothetically utilize a list template that I've already created for my organization, and then I'll just basically copy and paste that with new information. But for today, I'm going to actually use the Asset Manager template. So this one, again, for an IT company, this would make a lot of sense. It lists all the assets. So I'm going to use that template, and I'm going to rename that template to Affinity Asset Manager. And again, you could add a description if you want. I'm not going to do that right now. But when I press create, it automatically appears on the left-hand side. And as you can see, all of these columns here are automatically added with different manufacturers, models. Right now, I don't have anything on the list because I just created it. But for purposes of this webinar, I'm going to add a pretend device just to show you what that's going to look like. It's going to add random letters, status, available, manufacturer. They have these pretend manufacturers here. Make it a tablet. And again, just put in random values and make the due date for the warranty of this device to be on the 10th of this month. All right, and I press save. You can see how that appears here. And I actually want to show you two columns that you may not be currently using in your list format that actually can save you some time and help you automate some processes in your data collection and metadata collection. So here on the right-hand side, when I select Add Column, I'm going to scroll all the way down to see all column types and select Next. So say that I'm adding these devices in from an Excel workbook that I've already created. And I want it to automatically tell me when one of the warranties is overdue. I'm going to name this warranty status. And then here we can see there's a bunch of different options. I want to add an Excel calculation. So I'm going to select calculated. And I'm just going to do a very basic formula. Again, this is something that you're definitely going to have to just play around with. But I just want to show you in terms of how this is actually applied, what it's going to look like. So I'm going to quickly type in that formula, which is plus if, open parentheses. I'm going to find the due date and then do less than or to today, open and close parentheses, comma, past due, comma, still time, and then close parentheses. Again, it's a very basic formula, but this is a way that you can automate some of these Excel processes in your list, because that's primarily where your data is going to come from. So when I press OK and I redirect it back, I'm just going to refresh really quick and see if it worked. But here you can see automatically that column was added, and it is telling me that the warranty is past due. The due date was July 10th, and now I can automatically look down and say, okay, this machine is past due and I need to alert the client. And it just automates that quickly, so you don't have to go through and highlight each year on it by yourself. The other column type I want to show you that you might not currently be using is the lookup column. So essentially what this does, it automatically retrieves information from your SharePoint site. So say that I had created a list with different manufacturers that our organization use, or different site assets, or employee names. For purposes of this webinar, for this table, I want to know which employee owns each machine. So I'm going to type in the column name as employee, select lookup, and then getting information from an employee list that I added. When I press OK, when I add the employee tab, it is going to actually show me which employee owns the device. And as I add each new device in from this hypothetical Excel worksheet, which we don't have time for the purposes of today, it'll automatically retrieve that information from that employee list and add that in automatically. So again, this can be used for so many things, but if you're not already utilizing the feature, you're already uploading the information to your site, so there's no reason to manually do it twice. Create these automated processes to cut down time that you're spending on your lists. But with that, I want to move on to different elements of the SharePoint site. Again, if this is interesting, I can even do a separate one just entirely on different Excel functions within lists. But unfortunately, for the sake of time, I am going to move on. All right, now getting to more of the fun design elements of SharePoint, I'm going to navigate to how to create a new page. This is our home page right now. But say that I want to have a page for training. I already made one, but I'm just going to show you how I would make one from scratch. So I'm going to go back to that new dropdown, navigate to page. And again, Microsoft is super helpful. They give us these templates. I'm going to use this template today and select create page. Automatically, this intranet is created for us. Obviously, you might want to customize it for your organization, but Microsoft makes it super easy. You can add in your own headings. You can change font size, font color, highlight color. I can make this image my logo if I wanted to. You know, the visual elements of it, this is just bare bones. So I do encourage you to play around and see how you can customize your page. To add new elements to your page, you just hover over and this plus sign appears. I'm going to left click. And then here you can see all of the different elements that I can add to my page. I can add a YouTube video. If I want to add one of my document libraries or lists, so say I want to add that list that we just created, boom, that appears automatically on the page. I can create organization charts, planners. Again, these are all elements that we're going to be going deeper into our intranet webinar, but I encourage you to play around. On the aesthetic level, we have dividers just to make it cleaner, spacers so your users don't get overwhelmed. And just a bunch of cool stuff. We're gonna go into the features that I believe increase the most employee engagement. But for now, I wanted you guys to get familiar with what a page looked like. These are great pages to update on important projects, training courses, or say that you have a financial department, a marketing department, or a social media department, what have you. You can create a different page for each different department or each different project, and that all exists underneath your site page. So again, this is how you create a page from the get-go, but it does require a lot of customization. And some people hire developers to for their organizations. But if you don't have the budget for that, we are going to be doing a webinar on some tips to make your page easier to navigate, and easier for your employees or peers in your organization to use. Moving on to news posts. News posts are a great way to broadcast messages across your organization in a neat way. You can rather do it on a newsletter. So, for example, our organization, we publish a monthly newsletter just on our lately organization news, or just cybersecurity news. You can also just do events if you have any events coming up that you want at the front of your employees' faces. This is a great way just to automatically do it. Here you can see you can do event details, resources, status updates, processes. This is great for project management if you're updating on the status of a project. But for here, I'm just going to do a blank news template and show you what that would look like. And here you can say it's very bare bones, but say I wanted to broadcast something across, so new employee handbook. And then, I would write something in about how there's a new employee handbook, blah, blah, blah. I'm going to post and send, and that's automatically going to send to anyone that I put into our organization, and they're going to receive this like they would an email. But say I want to integrate this new news article on my actual web page. I'm going to go back to my home just to show you how this would look. Select edit. And here you can see if I press plus, I can actually navigate down. Or did I miss it? I can actually navigate down and find news. See, I don't know. All right, there we go. And as you can see, all my organization's recent news, which we just created, automatically shows on the home page. So that way, this is a hub where when your employees are going on your SharePoint site, they automatically redirect to see your news. So again, I encourage you to use this feature if you find that you're consistently sending reminder emails to people in your organization. Boom, they can't miss it. It's right on your homepage. Obviously, right now, the site is very ugly because we've just been adding stuff to it, but the news is a great feature just to keep everyone in the loop in your organization seamlessly. Next, the other dropdown that's really helpful is plan. So this is a great dropdown to use, and let's say that I want to make a plan for marketing KPIs. This is a great way to keep members of your team on track. So here you can see hypothetically, if I made this for marketing, I could create tasks for sales calls, follow-ups. I can set a due date. Let's make this for next Friday. And then I can assign it to somebody in my organization. I'm just going to assign it to myself, add task. Here we can see who it was. I can also add another person if I want to, when it is due, and that automatically shows up in the toolbar. Charts are just a great way to keep up with how your project is going, what tasks you still need to do. As we can see, the task that I just assigned is on the right-hand side. And which tasks you have left. So obviously we haven't finished our one task, so it is telling me here that we are late and we are in the red. Oh no. But say that I completed it and now it's done. I go back to charts and we are in the green. Hooray. But as you can imagine, this can be really useful if you're somebody who works on a bunch of different projects and just wants to keep track of where you are, how you're meeting your schedule. It's super useful. So yeah, here you can see this is due Friday, but I already finished it, so it's in the green. But hypothetically, any other tasks that I hadn't added in would appear here, and I could see how myself and my team were keeping up with it. So again, I encourage you to use plans. That's one that people use less so for some reason, but I find it super useful. Apps are just other apps from Microsoft 365 that you can integrate. We don't have any right now, but you can explore if, for an IT, you want to use help desk. If you're somebody who deals with the supply management, inventory management might be a useful one to add, but I'm not going to spend too much time on that today. All right. I'm going to get into actually now that we've gone over the basic parts of the interface, how can you increase engagement with people within your organization? What features exactly are going to help you do that? Firstly, if you haven't already added Teams to your site, here in the left-hand corner, you can see where I'm clicking. I would highly encourage you to add Teams to your site. This is what is going to make it more streamlined for you to communicate with people in your organization, coordinate meetings, and work together on content. So that will always appear on the left-hand side or pop up until you've granted permission. So here I'm just going to select continue, and then select add teams. And now it's creating my team. What's awesome about this is once it creates my team, I don't know why it's taking long to load. If I navigate to my calendar, it actually, I scroll down, I see I'm on calendar right now. Under groups, you can see that test site, that group has been created. So if I wanted to create a new calendar event, I'm going to left click, and I want to make sure I'm doing it under that test site calendar. So I'm going to select that calendar drop down, navigate to test site, and say I want to do a team check-in for the first. I can invite whatever attendees, and then select save. What that also does is that if I press refresh, that calendar event is also going to show up in your actual home page. So you can say create event. I can actually create an event that will show up, but when it's integrated with my teams, and right now it's not loading for whatever reason, all upcoming events that you add in your calendar are going to show up on your homepage. So again, I highly encourage you to integrate Teams if you haven't already. But going into actual features on your pages, so I'm just going to navigate back to the homepage and select edit. One of my favorite features of SharePoint are the forms. Forms are a great way to collect consistent feedback and data back from people that have access to your site, your coworkers, your employees, if you're a business owner. And it can be something serious like, hey, let's rate the employee onboarding process. How was it on a scale of 1 through 5? Or it can just start a conversation, like what was your high school mascot? Or what was your first childhood pet? It just is creating a conversation on your homepage and making sure that people's eyes and attention are automatically attracted to something. So to create a new form, you can see that when I select new form, it automatically appears on the right-hand side. I'm going to name this employee onboarding survey, and then select create. Then it's going to redirect me to the forms page. And now I can actually create a survey. So when I select new, I can do a multiple choice, I can do text, I can do a rating. I want to do a rating of rate your experience for one of the questions, and then for an additional question, I can do a text box and do how can we do better? And then I want to make this long answer, so I'm going to make a long answer required. And when I'm done, I can simply collect responses, and I can also directly send it to whoever in my organization. If this is something that you need immediate feedback on, you can add in names, and that's automatically going to send it to members of your organization. But here you can see when I go back, that form appears on my homepage. But again, this is something where I encourage you to have fun with it. If you don't have anything that you have to get direct data on, just do a fun question to encourage members of your organization to interact and engage with your site. Another really cool feature that you can do if I press plus is this organization chart or people highlight. So say that you want to do an employee of the month each month, and you want that to appear directly on your home site. When I navigate to people, I can just search in the email address of that employee I want to highlight, and it automatically shows up their profile. Now say I want to make this larger. I can also add a description, awesome CEO. I can add in a profile picture. I can add in 2 employees. I can also do an organization chart if this were an actual employee onboarding page and you wanted the new employees to know who in your organization does what. I could do different users for different heads of departments, just by duplicating. It just makes it easier to highlight those members of your organization, and also to create a level of familiarity within your site. So again, those are just a few features that I encourage you to use if you're not already using. But we're going to go more in depth on actual design elements, this web page itself is a little bit crazy right now, but how to create a site that flows well and is a place where your employees want to spend time on. So I do encourage you all to register for that one if you're somebody who struggles with creating a site that is aesthetically pleasing. But for now, I'm just going to go back to our slides really quick as we near the end of the presentation. Thank you all for sticking with me. I'm going to pause for questions really quick, but if not, I just want to move on to the latter end of our presentation. Hopefully I know that demo was a lot to take in. Hopefully it wasn't too overwhelming for you all. All right, so with that, I want to move on to data and security, and just things that your organization should be prepared for in the case that you do move forward with your SharePoint migration, or just even if you already have SharePoint. These are just considerations that you should have to keep your data safe and secure. So firstly is access control. So how often are you reviewing and auditing who has access to your SharePoint site, who's access to your files? This is something you want to consider. Earlier on the presentation, I somewhat touched on this, but I highly encourage you, especially if you're somebody who you're sharing a lot of client information. These are things that are easily susceptible to cyber breaches and cyber attacks. Even with SharePoint security measures, you can never be safe enough. So make sure that only members of your organization that really need to have access to certain files have access, and that you're consistently reviewing and updating that as needed. Secondly is utilizing 2FA. If you're not already using multi-factor authentication, which is essentially just a way to confirm your identity before you log in, highly encourage you to mandate that across your SharePoint site. Again, this is where a lot of material within your organization, a lot of data is being spread. So adding that extra layer might be annoying sometimes, but long term, it definitely, we've seen it so many times with our clients, that small layer of protection really does save the day. SharePoint already has some authentication features automatically, but again, better safe than sorry. I'd also recommend blocking downloads. So if you have, say, a really highly confidential fiscal report that no one in your organization should have access to, you can actually block the downloads manually. That way that nobody in your organization can download it, save a copy of their computer, and only that singular copy exists. So again, these are just features that if you're not already aware of, there might be something that you should consider integrating or standardizing, at least in those aspects of, financial reports, client information, at least for those types of files, just standardizing that across is a good rule of thumb. And then lastly, SharePoint does have automatic threat detection. However, there are ways to add remote monitoring and maintenance in tandem with that. Again, better safe than sorry. Your SharePoint site, if you're using the internal SharePoint site, has a lot of valuable information. And it's just with AI on the rise, it's good to be regularly updating, keeping consistent, and also regularly reviewing your current cybersecurity measures and seeing if they're up to par. So those are just quick data security overview I wanted to go over. Obviously, SharePoint has features already to keep you safe, but if you haven't recently reviewed your cybersecurity plan or some of the current cybersecurity measures you're already taking, I would highly recommend doing so. Make it a task for the end of this week, just to look into it, or ask your IT department what you're currently doing to keep your SharePoint information safe. Next are just some drawbacks to prepare for. Obviously, this is a SharePoint webinar, but I don't work for Microsoft. So I'm going to be honest about some of the disadvantages of SharePoint or just some things that you should expect or be prepared for. So firstly is just difficulty in setting up and maintaining your SharePoint site. Obviously, Microsoft does have those templates that make it easier and shave off on time. But if you're not somebody who is keen on website development, that might be an investment that your organization decides to take if you have the budget for it, just because making the interface easy to navigate is really important. Again, we are going to be having a future webinar on internet specifically, but this is just something to consider, that there are some frustrating aspects of getting started, making a seamless transition, and making sure that all of your files are where they need to be. Next is licensing and hosting costs. As I said earlier in the presentation, it is included in that Microsoft 365 Business Standard Plan, but that is an investment. So it is something to consider of how you're making the most of your investment, and how long-term it makes sense for your organization. And if you are hiring a developer or purchasing training programs, how much money are you putting into your site and how much are you getting out of it? That is something to consider. Next is employee learning curves. This is a huge one that people complain about, just that it's difficult for employees that have to manage their own sites, or even just learning how to navigate SharePoint is a learning process. I encourage you to utilize online resources as much as possible. YouTube is a fantastic resource. There's a lot of really qualified people on there that give SharePoint crash courses. So yeah, there are some courses that you can pay for, but I would exhaust your options with the free courses first and foremost before you move on to that. Next is the support search capabilities. This is what I was talking about with making sure that you're naming your files consistently. Make sure that you have a standardized process for your organization, or else it's just really easy to add 200 files and not know where to go to find the one that you need. So standardizing that process and setting up rules for users of your site is really important. And then lastly, it's just, it can be difficult to customize your SharePoint site. Obviously, you don't have as many opportunities as you were if you were coding something from scratch. But that is something to consider, that there might be other platforms that allow you to have more customization if that is important to your organization. And with that, as we wrap up, thank you guys so much for coming again. But I'm going to pause again quick for questions. Doesn't look like there's been any questions yet, but if anyone has any questions as we come to a close, I'm just going to give you guys a minute to type it in before we close for the day. I know there's a lot to take in too, so hopefully I didn't go too fast and you guys learned something. All right, so it doesn't look like anyone's posting questions. Um, in that case, just to really quickly talk about how, oh, syntax. I'm not sure what this person is asking. Syntax in SharePoint. So SharePoint. Feel free to email me after with your exact question. So I'm not sure what you are asking, but just moving on before we wrap up because we are getting to the end of our time here. Who we are, Authenity is a managed service provider in Springfield, Virginia. However, we do offer remote support, just your 24/7 help desk. We offer cybersecurity support and training and testing. So we touched a little bit on the importance of cybersecurity. If you are wary about cybersecurity for your organization, how that is changing with AI, and you just want a quick consultation on how you can be better and how you can prevent, paying more in the long term, I'm just going to type in my email in the chat. Please feel free to reach out, and I'm happy to schedule a quick phone call to answer any questions that you may have. But here on the screen, I'm not going to read all of them or all the other services that we offer. Next, I just want to let you know that this is actually the second to last webinar that we have in our summer webinar series. So we've already done Managing Outlook 101, one on Microsoft Copilot, and then today was on SharePoint. And then next month, we are doing one on IT budget return on investment. So how to create an IT support plan that makes sense for your organization and pays off more in the long term. And then soon later this week, we're going to be announcing our fall webinar series, and that is when we're going to be continuing our Copilot series and our SharePoint series. So I am going to be sending a follow-up email just with registration links as those events are posted, but keep a lookout for that. All right, and with that, I just want to thank you all again for joining me today. I know it's difficult to join in the middle of the week, but it's always a pleasure doing these and interacting with you all. And I hope that you have a fantastic rest of your week and a great rest of your summer. All right, bye everyone. Somebody says, how do we have the video clip and slides of the lecture? I will send those in a follow-up email.